I'll keep it brief and to the point. The biggest challenge, and I thank you for that, Tim, was to summarize everything we do from the road agency in 15 minutes. That's going to be quite a challenge. So if I overexceed my time, get me off of the stage. Who are we? Flemish Agency for Roads and Traffic. Well, we have changed actually our mission quite recently. We want to be leading in providing safe, reliable, sustainable and future-proof infrastructure and traffic management. Safety is obviously our top priority, and not in the least when we talk about supporting and approving projects for autonomous driving. Infrastructure is changing, the world is changing, autonomous mobility has a very big part in that. So what do we as a road authority need to do in terms of making sure that our infrastructure is also supportive of those new technologies? When we design infrastructure, it's lasting decades, hopefully, decades, but digital infrastructure is evolving much quicker than that. So how do we keep track of that, and how do we integrate autonomous vehicles in the traffic management that we do today? When we talk about innovation in our company, we define innovation focus areas. I have the 4 topics that I mentioned here. So smart roads through digitalization is obviously a very big topic with a number of projects that might look familiar. Today we talk about connected, cooperative and autonomous mobility. I always use the word SECAM. So if you want to come to autonomous mobility and supporting that, what do you have to do in advance, also in a connected and cooperative mobility system to move towards that future, near future of autonomous mobility? Then the EU Green Deal, obviously, the environment, CO2 reduction, electrification has also a big impact on what we have to do as road authorities. And then last but not least, the business transformation I have seen also from Rutter. This has got such a potential to change the total mobility system that we also have to rethink what are we doing as an agency, what kind of services are we developing, and get ready for that disruptive future, near future. Why are we interested as a road agency? Probably all of you know this diagram. Hillier in 2002 said that more than 90% of the accidents have some human interaction which is leading to an accident. And of course, when you talk about automation, the question is, to what extent can automation reduce the number of accidents and also the severity? That's why we are interested, because of the safety perspective. Measuring the impact, that is something else. That is really very challenging, especially the small scale of deployments that we are currently talking about. Then this one, autonomous versus connected autonomous. Still today, there are 2, let's say, lines of thinking. The top one being the autonomous vehicle scans everything around itself and can handle everything without any interaction with infrastructure or any other technical system. And the second line is the connected and autonomous connected vehicle that is actually can look way beyond. So the event horizon on how far a connected vehicle can see is much wider than an autonomous vehicle. Even with LiDAR, we're talking about 250 meters max that the vehicle can see from each other. This image is like a couple of years old already, but there is more and more consensus that the connected autonomous vehicle is really the way forward. That's why I asked the question to the other speaker just before lunch, what are you talking about? The interaction with infrastructure. So we're not the only ones thinking that, apparently. A few words before we define our role as a road operator. We are involved together with the LAN, with Department of Mobility and Public Works, and also with Economy, Science and Innovation in a strategic project on shared autonomous mobility, which basically outlines what is the role and the responsibility of the public authorities in its entirety. And we have 2 roles, basically. We have an active role, and we have, from public authorities, a regulating role. The active role, I will go into more depth, but yeah, the creation of the ecosystem also in Flanders and Belgium, and directing and even redirecting market developments. Is it so, indeed, that less vehicles will come to the market? I do believe that will be the case. I'm not the only one to believe it, because I can see a lot of automotive companies have actually already started a MaaS subsidiary. Why are they doing that? They also see that there is a chance that there will be less vehicles sold. Therefore, they are diversifying their portfolio to make sure if the level 4 vehicle is ready, that they can get income, repetitive income, in a MaaS service model. They will be building the platforms, building the vehicles, and gaining repetitive income. You can see big shifts in the whole value chain of OEMs as well. Companies that were super proud to be independent are now teaming up. For instance, Sony is teaming up with Honda in Japan. Of course, two very big players in the Japanese market. But why are they doing that? I think MaaS is definitely, and electrification is a second big driver there. So the active roles. The regulating role, I think, the speaker behind me, Nicolas, will also speak about that. But it's any measures that we have to take in relation to the legislative framework to deliver an efficient service, taking into account environment and people. And with legislative framework, I do not only mean the aspect of testing, but also commercial deployment and under which conditions. Inclusion also for rural areas, for instance, making sure that autonomous mobility is available there. The active role, these are the 8 roles that we see, and in green, the ones where as a road operator, we see ourselves playing a role. The other ones I will briefly explain, but not go into detail. Matchmaker, what does that mean? If I am now a service provider of autonomous mobility and I have an app, and another company has another app with also a supply and demand, and another one, there is a risk of having a lot of empty kilometers. What we believe is that the authorities need to make sure that either there is one customer platform or the lighter version, that you have an open API, so the demand and the offer of autonomous mobility from third-party service providers can be widely spread. In other words, if I ask for the 2 minutes autonomous shuttle to be here, that I'm actually calling various service providers instead of just one. That's the matchmaker. Network architects. Today, from a public point of view, of course, we use fixed bus stops, for instance. Also here at Terhills, there are fixed stops. If you think about robotaxi, robo-shuttle, is that still the case? Do we go for a complete open system, or do you still design a network which might be more flexible, but that network architecture is still necessary? That's very clear. Also in the US, when you talk about the locations where robotaxis can stop, in the US, in these cities, they are doing curbside management. The vehicles cannot stop everywhere. That's, for me, curbside management is also a form of network architects. Fleet operator, Ruter is here, will also be a fleet operator for autonomous vehicles, to my understanding. The line has a big fleet. We have to transit that also into operating a different fleet. And then training and recruitment, you need the right skills, obviously. Wow, time is flying fast. Infrastructure manager, I actually already heard this. So, of course, you have physical infrastructure, which is all the road elements, the physical road elements on the left-hand side. But the vehicles already today have a digital backbone from their own. So when we talk about infrastructure, we also talk about digital infrastructure. This is a BIM model from the same intersection that you see here that we use to create the roads and maintain the roads. But we believe that the next generation, really a digital twin, will also be necessary to provide services to the autonomous vehicle, especially in mixed traffic conditions. If the full autonomous vehicle is available today, yeah, there will still be a number of years, some say 30, I think personally it will be much quicker, and let's say 10 to 15 years, that mixed traffic will be there. Autonomous and non-autonomous will coexist, which is the most complex situation to resolve and to deal with. If you become an operator of digital infrastructure, then I started a strategic project. What does that mean for my company? We have to become a digital road operator, but what does that now mean? And what you often see in these debates is that we restrict what we do to the bottom two layers of the operational model. We talk about data and data specification and standards and the technology, LGS, ILD, sensories, and so all the specifications. But what we really have to do is to make sure that if you supply data, that the process to supply that data is evaluated to fit the needs, that the organization that you have is supportive of the services that you want to offer, and what kind of services do we want to offer. And if you do not change the vision of your company, of your road agency, of your city council, it becomes extremely hard to support these kind of projects. So we have already taken some decisions in AWV. We have changed our mission. We have changed the organization. We are selecting the right services, but it's a tough exercise. What kind of no-regret measures do we have to take on the physical infra and on the digital infra side? We identified 3 overlapping domains: digital asset management, digital traffic management, and digital construction sites. And with yellow building blocks, how we call them. So building a digital twin, guaranteeing that there is connectivity along the roads where connected and autonomous driving will take place. Facilitating CCAM, cooperative traffic management, is just a few examples. And step 1 that we have taken is we have to roll out a digital data infrastructure in support of connected and cooperative driving, automated not yet. What are we doing there? We are doing this within our mobility data program. We are deploying CITS use cases at 350 traffic lights by end of 2024. There's a lot of other CITS use cases as well, so the dynamic information from gantries, we will bring it into the vehicle. We're doing some R&D also on active modes, and with the data, what kind of policy measures can you take? I'm not going to go through this due to the time, but this is, let's say, the different batches of digital services that we will start to supply until 2024, and the architecture that is behind. Now, the only reason I have this slide is that it makes me look more intelligent than I actually am. And there's a second reason. The public data that we offer, this is for us critically important. If you supply digital services to a connected and autonomous vehicle, your data must be in very good shape and it must be disclosed using the right standards. What are we also doing as infrastructure manager? That's obviously following the market developments, and it's going very fast at UNECE level, working party 1 on road safety and 29 on road systems. ALKS is already commercially available in Germany. So level 3 autonomous driving on the highway at speeds lower than 60 km/h is already possible today. It's individually homologated vehicles for the time being in Germany, but what you see mostly is in the Regulation 157, they talk about the infrastructural conditions that a vehicle needs to adhere to in order to drive in the autonomous mode. Infrastructure, when you say that word, we jump up. But actually, we were not involved in those debates. And going forward for really advanced ADS systems, we definitely want to be around the table. ALKS Plus has been voted already. That means as of January 2023, any constructor that gives in the documents to test and be approved will have the authority to, on a highway at speeds up to 130 km/h, to perform level 3 driving. That means driver is out of the loop. The vehicle will drive itself, not just within one lane, but also the vehicle can supply automated lane changes from vehicle side. No science fiction. The tests are ongoing in Germany and Sweden for this. And by the way, this is already commercially developed and available in Japan. No science fiction. Anno 2022, it was already there. Valet parking, obviously, level 4, the first use case, is also being tested and likely to be introduced already in 2023 by one constructor in a parking in Germany. What we are doing is looking at what are the infrastructural requirements from OEM side to the road operator. And in this case, who is the road operator is a very good question. Is it the highway and secondary roads operator? Is it the city operator? Is it the parking operator? That is technically and legally not organized so very well. What are we also doing? When you talk about homologation, there is already legislation from August 22, on how to type approve an automated driving system in Europe. That is already valid today. What is the big difference? If you homologate a car today, you talk about brake, steering, suspension, body electrical, and those kind of things. New is that the infrastructural requirements have to be homologated as well. So we have started the debate with our colleagues in the homologation division at the ministry to debate on how do we cooperate on this thing. We are composing a list of what kind of infrastructure elements need to be tested. Think about how does a vehicle deal with rush hour lanes, dedicated lanes, bijzonder overrijdbare bedding, hard to translate in English, special zebra crossings, so special infrastructure. How do we deal with that? And how do we make sure it is tested by OEMs before they deploy their projects? The second of 4 roles, and I will speed up, Tim. When vehicles communicate, of course, it becomes very important to make sure that the standards that they communicate in and the service that we supply is basically the same. You don't want any Waymo communication, but no Waymo GM Cruise communication. So we are in a lot of working groups, C-Roads for CITS, the CCAM partnership, which is all about where Europe wants to go to until 2027 is really large-scale demonstrations and what is the research required to come to those large-scale deployments in Europe. And moreover, from a road authority perspective, we have signed a memorandum with European EU car, that's the automotive research of OEMs, to do joint research on how do we make this happen in Europe. One of the largest projects there in Europe is the HiDrive project. They will supply, they have actually already published a code of practice on connected and automated driving. Our third role is then the pivot of the Flemish ecosystem. So our role there is to basically facilitate tests. So many of the tests that we have seen the review, at least the Belgian or the Flemish ones, I have been involved in. We have already a code of conduct since 2016 that regulates how this needs to be done. And we are supporting that scheme basically with any project, whether it's on our roads or whether it's in support of cities, like the test project in Londerzeel was actually not taking place on AWV roads, but still we would supply advice to the city, to the municipality, to the company who wants to do the test on what they have to do to go through this process. In a nutshell, you describe the project. FOD Mobility has a new article in the traffic code, Article 59, that can deviate, that can basically allow any deviation from any traffic legislation to be approved, obviously, if it can be done in a safe manner, even for level 4 tests. And then under step 2, okay, what are now the boundary conditions? Following the code of practice, what is the required physical and digital infra? Where do you want to do it? When do you want to do it? We always do an evaluation with an evaluation commission, so it's not me alone. We also talk to traffic psychologists, to our colleagues from road safety, to connectivity experts to make sure that the test can happen in a safe manner. And these are some of the examples. Of course, also the Terhills project, we had some exchange of information. And then the last role, and this is my last slide, traffic management of the future or multimodal traffic management. Of course, we are involved in a lot of research on how is this now going to look forwards. TM4CAT, Traffic Management for Connected and Automated Driving, is one of those projects. This is looking at what do we need from a traffic management perspective. It's talking about distributed ODD, the operational design domain. If a car is within or outside of the ODD, as a road operator, we believe it's important to know that. Why is it important? If a vehicle will perform a minimum risk maneuver, and this is already in Germany the case, we believe we have to inform also other road users. When is this new vehicle in Germany doing a minimum risk maneuver? Well, if the speed is picking up above 70, sorry, and I'm driving 60, that's the ODD limit. If the other traffic accelerates and the driver does not take over, the vehicle will do a minimum risk maneuver. What does that mean? While the traffic is accelerating, the vehicle will be coming to a full stop. That is dangerous. So the minimum risk maneuver, we believe we have to be informed. Another one is DIREC, is looking at digital infrastructure, especially the impact of digital twin on the ODD and ISAT levels. That is, in short, my story, working on the road of today and tomorrow. Yeah.
Thank you, Kristof. I think we have time for a question. I see Xavier has one.
Thank you, Kristof. You mentioned at the very last slide the digital twin. Do you mean that you expect exchange? Because it's a very important pillar of your vision to have a digital twin of the physical infrastructure. Do you expect that in the future the cars will be able to provide and update your digital twin so that the information, you will have HD maps that will allow the vehicles to operate autonomously, but at the same time those cars will be able to feed somehow digital twin? Is this what you have in mind, or do you have any comment on this?
Yeah, we're indeed thinking of a two-way communication. So keeping the physical infrastructure and the maintenance updated by using data from vehicles and analysis from images coming from vehicles, but at the same time supplying information to that vehicle as well. One of the use cases that we are looking now in TM4CAT is in a tunnel. When you exit a tunnel, not so much in Belgium, but abroad, often you also have cliffs, and there can be very strong crosswinds. So one of the thinkings, this is the Keito University in Japan, is that if there are very strong crosswinds, let's use the remote sensing to make sure that that information is transferred to the vehicle, and then the vehicle can decide, am I still within my ODD, or do I have to ask for a transition of control to the driver? So that kind of use cases, two-directional.